What is going on, y'all? This is the Caveman. I'm here with Football with Oz, Austin, for episode God knows what of Against the Blitz. And today we are going to be drafting our own respective teams based on the prime of each player. This was Austin's idea, and we loved it the second he suggested it. So I'm going to let him explain. But before we obviously get into it, Discord down below if you want to talk more football with us. Like, comment, share, subscribe if you enjoy. Thank you for all the support on the recent episodes. Austin, how does this work? How are we going to break this down? I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it was actually inspired by how often in the Discord we're just constantly talking about comparing players. And then like the discussion's always like, well, Larry Fitzgerald had the better career, but this guy was better at his peak, in his prime. And it got me thinking like who was the best player at each position in their prime that we are able to remember. So we're going to go back and forth. One of us will start it, and we're just going to do a snake draft. Starting with quarterbacks, we're going to pick the best version of a quarterback or each position that we can remember. And you can use production, you can use wins, you can use just what your eyes saw. And roughly, this is going to put us about 2010, 2011, maybe even a little bit later. Because we're in our 20s. We can't remember, stuff that was happening in the 2005. I wasn't there for peak Randy Moss or Terrell Owens or any of that. But starting from roughly 2010 and on, we're going to be drafting the very best team possible of the best players available.
Yes, I did. We were talking pre-show about kind of what the requirements were for this for each of us, and I was saying how for myself, I can't sit here and say with full confidence that I remember too much from anything like 2014 is the year I can confidently say I fully was watching football, and I remember players and a lot of players and who was good, who was bad. That was when I really started to sit and watch on a consistent basis. But there are definitely some players that are good enough, like we were saying before, that you just know about, you've watched before because you've seen a lot of highlights of them, or maybe you just have like small flashbacks because of how good they were. They're just guys that left that sort of impact. But I did have a question for you, because this is something I was pondering a lot while trying to choose some of my players. And my question is kind of convoluted, but was there a certain threshold of like how much of peak of that player you saw in order for it to kind of qualify, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I think to me it was like there had to be a full season that I could go back and point to. Okay. Be like, yes, do you remember the 2015 version of this player? But it also couldn't have only been just that year. Like, for instance, like if he has like an 1,800-yard receiving season, monster season, but he had like 950 the year before and after that. I don't know if I can quite call that like a peak. It was kind of just like a one-year wonder. But if there's a player that's putting up like 1,500, 1,800, 1,500, or something pretty similar to that, like a 2 to 3 year span of just pure dominance, I can call that a peak. But most of mine, when I reference back to the player, I point to one specific season, their best season, that I can point to and talk about what they accomplished, how they looked, maybe what they produced like. But yeah, hope more often than not, these weren't just one-year wonders.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I settled on. At first, I was like, I have to be able to point to one season. But then I started getting a little bit conflicted, because there are some players that I was like, man, there were maybe a handful of games or enough games across multiple points of their career where I felt like it almost accumulated to like a full season's worth of performances, that I was like, man, that I've seen enough of that player at his peak to feel like it qualifies, if that makes sense. It might not come in a bunch, it might not come in a row, but at some point in my process here, I was like, all right, I feel like I've seen enough of this player at his best that it's going to make sense, even if in the case that it wasn't in a singular season. But I was asking myself that, and I even called my local sports radio, and asked that question. And they're older guys. They had no ability, all due respect to them, to like decipher what I meant. Maybe I used a bad example of comparison because I was trying to explain the question to them. And I said a guy like Cam Newton, maybe for example, versus a guy like Aaron Rodgers, and they're like, well, they're two different questions to me, but there's no doubt that Aaron Rodgers is the better quarterback. There's no doubt that Aaron Rodgers is the all-time great and Cam Newton isn't. It's like, all right, you're missing the point. Like, it has nothing to do with who's the all-time better player. Like, they just kept using all-time. I'm like, that literally is the opposite of this entire conversation. So
yeah, all-time matters nothing in this conversation. Right. Like, there's players like Larry Fitzgerald that were unbelievable football players, but his prime was 1,400 yards. Like, I think it's pretty arguable. Like, Larry Fitzgerald did not have the peak that a lot of these players did, despite having an incredible career and being one of the most respected receivers of all time. So we're not talking about career whatsoever. We're not talking about players that have more career tackles than drops. We're talking about, like, individual short areas of time where a player just completely dominated the league and was probably the best or the second best at their position for a while.
Yes. So just want to make that clear before that becomes a point of conflict. But I feel like, I don't know, maybe this is wrong of me to suggest, but I feel like younger people can wrap their head around that a little bit more than, like, I don't know. I feel like if I would pitch that again to them, they would still say the same thing, even if I tried to explain it differently. They'd be like, there's no question. And I feel like older generations are a bit, like, harsher on Cam Newton for some reason. Like, I feel like we respect Cam Newton a bit more than maybe they were, which is why I feel like it was a bad example. But that doesn't matter. That doesn't fucking matter right now. That does segue us into our first overall pick. Austin, do you want the first pick?
I don't care, dude. There's so many positions. You can go ahead if you got it. I don't have one spoiler. Like, there was not one quarterback where I was like, yeah, definitive best season of all time. There have been a lot of good ones.
Yes, you were very right, and it makes it extremely difficult for me to decide, because I also was trying not to get wrapped up in accolades on top of it too, because I wanted to be sure my eyes were doing a lot of the talking, which I guess goes in place of accolades. But oh man, and I made it a point to leave out Tom Brady just on purpose because even if he qualifies or not, I just felt like that was boring. So with that said, this is gonna sound ridiculous. I think the first overall pick in the prime peak draft, I gotta say Josh Allen. Like, Josh Allen at his best is the best football player I have ever seen in my life. And this is the player in particular I'm talking about, where I don't think you can point to one season in particular and say that was his best, because he's had a good chunk of, he's had multiple different years of different products. Like, he was ultra explosive with his legs for a couple seasons. Then he, like this year, he kind of pulled back, but he came extremely methodical over the last couple of years. Like, we've seen different versions of what this player looks like. But, and I talk about it every episode at this point, the 13 seconds was the best football player I've ever seen. Josh Allen in that game. And
he was unbelievable.
I mean, and when I see a guy that is such a good passer from the pocket when he has to be, has proven he can be careful with the football, has the ice in his veins, is the dual threat play extender, but also can just make any throw on the move under any sort of duress. I don't think I've really seen any other quarterback that has that combination of skills, while also having what I feel like is enough of a clutch factor. So I've said it before, but I do think Josh Allen is at his best, like, could be the best quarterback we've ever seen. It's just we don't always see it, which is why it's so fucking frustrating. But
yeah, he was a guy like today, bro. I was wondering, because I was just thinking of myself today, like what current players are going to be Hall of Famers, and Josh Allen's going to be a Hall of Famer, but to the extent of, like, how confident are we? Because talent wise, it's like, oh my god, yeah, this guy could be a top 10 quarterback of all time when it's all said and done. But to be a top 10 quarterback of all time when it's all said and done, usually you have to have the accolades for it. Because, I mean, people shit on Dan Marino for never winning a Super Bowl and, not having the accolades for it. And Josh Allen, as of right now, is kind of sitting in that bucket of, like, yes, this guy is a top 2 quarterback in the league for a long time. surefire Hall of Famer, but he doesn't have like the accolades of one. That's the hard part for his conversation. Because everyone else in these lists is like, yeah, this guy won MVP 4 times. Yeah, this guy won 3 Super Bowls and was MVP in 2 of them.
Yeah.
And for him, he just hasn't done it yet. But peak for peak, last episode, we talked about who we thought were the best quarterbacks in the league. And I was the only one that said Josh Allen was the best quarterback currently playing. Yeah. Because I think when we talk about peaks with him or Mahomes, it's a different story in history. But when we're talking right now, I do think Josh Allen is the best quarterback to be playing in the league right now. When we're talking about highs, lows, peaks, whatever, I think that he is the best. But as a Bills fan, I can see it. I mean, you've watched probably every Josh Allen drop back and run ever done. So it would be really hard not to feel that way for how much Josh Allen you've watched in your life. He didn't make my list. But as a Bills fan, yeah, I can appreciate the little homerism in there.
It's not even that. It's like, I mean, maybe it is. But I always pride myself, the day I started making content, I always prided myself on being as objective as possible. And I'm honestly more harsh on Josh Allen and the Bills than probably most fans / regular NFL watchers. And I mean, I went on record in, I think, the last episode saying that I think the Josh Allen fumble against the Broncos was like one of the top 10 worst plays in NFL history. Like, that's how bad it was looking at how the game ended. But the amount of individual plays I can think of where he has made something out of nothing is just not normal. And I think this is one of those conversations where you can put Josh Allen in this bucket, but also say, okay, I still can't put him over Mahomes yet, because head-to-head, in my head, I can't say he is better because Mahomes has won more. He has beat him in the playoffs, but it's more nuanced than that. I think pound for pound, for the reasons why you have Josh Allen over Mahomes is why I have him over Mahomes in a situation like this. But I think when, in terms of the actual like list you might make for current day, more is in play when looking at wins and losses and accolades. But I think this is where a lot of that can get removed, and you look at more of like the individual, if you will.
Yeah, 100%. That's kind of where I picked my quarterback. It was a pure talent perspective. But the best quarterback I have ever laid my eyes on, and you can pick a year, but I'll pick 2011 Aaron Rodgers as the most talented quarterback I have ever laid my eyes on. Because he's a guy where it's like, he's one of the only guys on here where it's like, there wasn't a system built around him like to get the most of his ability. It was the most basic passing offense you could possibly design. But he was so freakishly good at throwing the football. It didn't really matter. It didn't matter what receivers were out there. He's made multiple receivers all pros. And he's just like, it was the best spinner of that football that has ever existed. And in that 2011 year that I picked out, he set the all-time NFL record for single-season passer rating with 122.5. With 45 touchdowns to just, I believe, 6 interceptions. So he is the greatest at taking care of the football of all time while also putting up crazy touchdown numbers, having probably the best mixtape of throws overall of all time. Like the amount of tight window throws that guy completed, while also like getting his team to like 15-win seasons pretty regularly. He was the best I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, he would have been my next pick if Josh Allen wasn't my selection. And I think it's difficult for me, at least in a conversation like this, not to take dual threat ability into account, because that, you know, we're talking a lot about physical traits here when it comes to a peak and what that player could look like at their best. And when they can move, you're just naturally going to think more of them. But Rodgers was that good with the ball in his hands. And he could. I mean, he definitely was.
He was like, I wouldn't say dual threat, but I would call him above average mobile in his prime. Like throwing on the run for him and playmaking was very easy.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So I think for Rodgers, he just was that good at placing the football wherever he wanted. I mean, it was teleporting. We don't have to rehash his highlights. We all know what his best throws look like. And I think a lot of people think back to the Hail Marys with Rodgers and kind of his deeper throws, but mine will always be that there's a throw I think he makes to like Aaron Jones rolling right or something in the back right corner of the end zone, or was it Jamal Williams?
No, he threw one to Aaron Jones. I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, that throw was crazy. The one to Jared Cook.
I know that because I watched 45 minutes of Aaron Rodgers throws today. Yeah. Like, my eyes hurt. Like, I have strained eyes from watching Aaron Rodgers highlights all day long. Because this is, like, people talk about, highlight tapes. They talk about Caleb Williams and this stuff today, and they talk about, Josh Allen and Mahomes. But from difficulty of throws and, like, a pure aesthetic standpoint, I've never seen it. I don't think anyone even comes close, to be so honest. From a career perspective, not even close.
Yeah. Well, I think the reason why I have Josh here is because if there's one guy that has placed a football on the move or in improbable situations where he has to put it, I don't know. I can't think of any other guy that has done it as often as Josh has. That's close to Rodgers, if you will. And close is a strong word, but like I said, like that Shakir throw last year, I think it was in the snow when he was getting flushed deep to his right. I think it was against the Bengals? Who am I?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
he made a throw to Shakir.
Yeah, they played like in a snowstorm.
Yeah, and he fit it in literally like the slot of a mailbox, and it hit Shakir right in the hands. I mean, those are the types of throws that I think a lot of quarterbacks can make, but you can't put together a 5 to 6 minute video of these clips. Whereas like a guy like Josh, a guy like Rodgers, you can. And for going back to the whole Mahomes thing, I think a lot of what puts him where he is now is winning, which obviously goes hand in hand to some capacity, but there's just so much more to it because of the sport of football. So Rodgers would have been my second pick for sure. My second quarterback pick. Oh man.
I have two. I have two left that are both equal to me.
This is gonna sound like I haven't watched anything pre like 2019, but how does Lamar Jackson at his peak not make a list like this?
He was definitely in my consideration, 100%.
I mean,
he actually wasn't one of the two, but
like
nasty season.
Lamar Jackson, I was heavily in favor of Josh winning the MVP in 2024, but looking back at Lamar's numbers, it's like I can see why people were pissed off. Like this guy threw for 45 and 5. 4,600 yards, and he's the best rushing threat in the league. And he doesn't win the MVP. He had an Aaron Rodgers passing stat line and is impossible to tackle, impossible to catch in the open field, and he doesn't win the most valuable
I couldn't believe
player.
he didn't win that. I could not believe it at the time. My jaw was dropped when he lost.
I mean,
I'll be so real. I love Josh Allen. Like I like him more than I like Lamar, so I wasn't upset. But I was like, oh my god! It was like winning a game by a kind of like BS defensive pass interference. Yeah. I was like, I'll take it, Jesus, but like, blue. I don't know about that one.
And this isn't even the first year that he's put up numbers like that. Like when he won unanimously in 2019, he threw for 37 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, and that was the year he was probably the best rushing threat because everyone was just getting acclimated to him, and no one could catch his ass.
That's the Lamar I think of
yes.
when I think of prime. Like 2024, he was the best rushing quarterback in the league. But 2019, he was arguably the best athlete in the sport. Mm-hmm. Like nowadays, he's a good athlete for a quarterback. But back then, he was a great athlete for any position. Like he could have played corner and been just fine, which is nuts.
He had, at this point, there's definitely a blueprint out, and he's had to adjust and become a better passer. But like you said, like in 2019, the sheer athlete was stretching the field so much that I'm not going to go as far as to say that he was like a bad passer necessarily, but because of how terrified teams were of his legs and no one having a damn clue what to do about it, everything was open. I mean, everything was open for him down the field. And it just is something to, it's hard to deny having numbers like that twice in a career, nearly 2 MVPs already. And once again, like, he gets docked down my real list because of maybe some blunders that happen in the postseason or not being able to get over the hump. But I feel like that's where you can remove that part of it in a conversation like this.
Sure. 100%. God, I can't believe I have to leave one of my guys off my list. I think the guys that I have on my list right now have probably the two best seasons of all time, which is really hard to leave one off. I might even say my honorable mention. I'm going to say 2013 Peyton Manning had the best statisticals by far, actually. The guy threw for 5,400 yards and 55 touchdowns. But 2018 Patrick Mahomes was a nightmare. Yeah. And the Patrick Mahomes that we know, like from the last couple years, like it's been more about like, oh, he just finds a way to win. The refs are on his side. They're winning Super Bowls, but they're scoring 20 points. Like it's whatever. But the Mahomes of 2018 threw for over 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns, and put up probably the second best highlight tape we've seen of absolutely stupid throws. I mean, people after that were really trying to do like the no look throw because he was doing crossbody no looks all the time. Like his deep ball to Tyreek was an unstoppable thing, and his communication with Kelsey was an unstoppable thing. Like it was probably the best quarterback of the last 10 years to me. And I almost took him first overall. That's how close to Rodgers he was. And especially with the athlete, like what he can do with his legs, I think he's like top 3 in playoff rushing yards of all time for a quarterback. I think he actually is number 1. So yeah, this guy is definitely a special player.
Yeah, maybe I'm a little bit spoiled by what's happened these last couple years, and I let that season go adrift a bit. I think for me it was kind of going back to the idea of what's your threshold, and I don't think we have seen like worse versions of Mahomes per se. I think he's adapted extremely well. Of the big 3 that we talk about, the big 4 nowadays, he's adapted in so many different ways as a quarterback, which is something I've always admired about him. But I think when looking at it from a production standpoint and a sheer athletic standpoint, I think outside of that season, I think that was where I was like, all right, it was 1 year. Did we really see it again to that extent? And that's why like a Lamar pushed it.
Close.
He did, but Lamar like 45-5 and 37-8 with the rushing threat he was. I'm like, dude, how do I know?
In 2022, Mahomes also threw for 5,200 yards and 41 touchdowns. Well, he had a stretch after that where he threw for 4,700 yards and 37 touchdowns 3 straight times, which is pretty nuts. I feel like he's one where like I feel like to me, looking back, all of Mahomes' seasons kind of just lumped into one player. Because a lot of those seasons all kind of felt like they started and ended the same way. So it wasn't like, oh yeah, the 2018 version or the 2020 version. Whereas like someone like Lamar, like you could show me a clip and I could tell you what year it was from. Yeah. Because he moves and looks so different every single time. But with Mahomes, there was a while where like every single year blended together. He played with the same receivers and he looked the same and nothing changed about him outside of like the last 2 seasons to me. So prime, like we're talking 2018 to like 2022, I think that was probably the best stretch of quarterback I've actually watched in my life. Yeah. But I don't know. Like that's what I'm saying. Like he was close to my number 1, and I'm kind of talking myself into it.
Well, who would you? You got to make a choice.
No, Rodgers is my first pick. I already picked him. Because if you took Mahomes, I would have no chance to take him then. So
well, who would be your second then?
Well, it would be Rodgers or Mahomes. Like I was between those two. You got to
pick a second though.
Oh, Mahomes is my second.
Oh, okay. So you're leaving Peyton out for sure.
I'm leaving Peyton out. Yeah. And it's hard because I mean, bar none, the best statistical season of all time. But it just wasn't flashy. Like the highlights weren't there, and it's a stupid like.
It's not stupid. That's the whole point of this conversation. That is like what this is built on.
Well, he quarterbacked in such a pure way that he didn't even need highlights. It was just like ball caught out immediately touchdown. Like there was nothing. Like there was no playmaking that had to be done. Yeah. The ball was just out and scored because he was so fucking good that year. But it just didn't look sexy, so it didn't make my list. But that was the best quarterback season of all time from like an actual like IQ perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's all about what you value. That's why Caleb Williams was my third. No, I'm kidding. But should we go to offensive line, receivers, tight end?
I think we just go down the running back line.
Okay.
Just go down the list.
All right. So my running back, you probably won't be too surprised by this, but I have to go with Derrick Henry. how is Derrick Henry not? Derrick Henry is the prototypical, not even prototypical. This is a running back built in a lab with every slider pulled all the way up. There is not a running back you will ever see in history again, and I will stand on this hill, that is built the way he is, that can run over 20 miles an hour in the blink of an eye. He hits gaps up the middle between the tackles, splits safeties, gets around the edge, beats defensive backs down the field at a rate that we have never seen for a running back that is his size. This is one of the best breakaway running backs of his generation of like since 2000, since the early 2000s, and he's one of the best power short yardage running backs that we've ever seen. This guy is on pace to be in the top 5 all-time rushing yards list. He's already up there for rushing touchdowns. He's had, like, pick any year where he's damn near eclipsed 2,000 yards, and you can say that was his prime. I think the one in particular where he carried Ryan Tannehill and company through the postseason on his damn back, beating Lamar Jackson in the nearly unbeatable Baltimore Ravens that season when Lamar won MVP. So it's like everything that people say Adrian Peterson did, Derrick Henry also did. He just played in the wrong era. And I will stand on that hill, and there's not another running back that I think you could say has a better peak than him. I will die on that one.
Yeah, Peterson's my peak. 2012 Adrian Peterson, specifically. MVP.
Derrick Henry would have won MVP in 2019 if it was not 2019.
I don't know. Like, even looking at the 2012 year where Adrian Peterson won, he beat Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, both in their primes, and he beat the 1,900-yard Calvin Johnson, the record setter. So, like, it wasn't like he had, like, some, like, Vic Beasley, T.Y. Hilton 1,400-yard guys he had to beat out. Like, we're talking about the 2 greatest quarterbacks of all time and arguably the best receiver of all time that he beat out in an MVP race, because the year after he tore his ACL, he rushes 8 yards shy of the record, wins MVP, takes a Christian Ponder-led team to the playoffs. Like the difference between Tannehill and Ponder, to me, it's astronomical. We're talking like a Toyota Corolla versus a unicycle. It's not even the same thing. Like, it is so different. And, like, I think that, like, Derrick Henry was the greatest athlete, like, for his size. I think Peterson's the greatest athlete in general to play the position. I mean, this guy averaged 6 yards per carry this year, which was nuts. Like, that's so stupid, especially with the passing offense that he had. Like, it wasn't even usable, and they still got to the playoffs. This is the greatest running back season I have ever seen. It's actually not even that close. Like a gap. There's a gap.
I don't know how you can say that. There is no running back like Derrick Henry that's ever been built or played.
He's unique, yeah.
Yes, and that in itself is enough. That combination of speed and power and tackle breaking ability. He's so nimble. Like, why is a guy this size bending his body inward to slip off a tackle or leg kicking up to get away from ankle bites? Like, this guy can move in as many ways as you need a running back to move to evade a tackle. He's always near the top of missed tackles forced lists. He can, like I said, run 20 miles an hour plus in the blink of an eye. I just don't know how you can watch Derrick Henry and say it's because he's still playing. I'm telling you right now, so. When Derrick Henry is done and we're 3 or 4 years removed, we're gonna be like, "Fuck, man, he was that good," and everyone's gonna be like, "He was great. Derrick Henry's one of the best ever." It's like, yeah, I've been saying that.
Yeah, he is. I mean, he was my number 2 peak that I've ever watched. I mean, he ran for over 2,000 yards himself. That's not easy to do. He 100% deserves to be on a peak list. But I think Adrian Peterson is like the gold standard of running backs we've watched, because it wasn't even just the fact that he was the greatest athlete to ever play the position. He was a genuine threat on third down. And I think that's the one thing he has over Derrick Henry, especially on my list, where, like, Derrick Henry would just come off the field on third down. Like, unless it was like 3rd and 3 or shorter, they had somebody else do that job. But Adrian Peterson, like, was a legit threat to run a route, catch the ball, and make something happen after it. So that's kind of like, outside of having pretty similar rushing seasons, I think AD has him on that one.
Yes, but is that Is that because just how much he was leaned on? So it's like you're almost if Derrick Henry had unlimited stamina, are you taking him off the field for third downs a lot of the time?
He's just a bad receiver.
I guess, but like how many great third down backs are you throwing out there nowadays that are just that sheerly good at playing third down, or are they just spelling the early down back, or are they slightly faster or able to catch the ball slightly better? Like it's more of to give these guys a break, I feel like sometimes, than it is just they're naturally better or they're the starting backs worse.
Peterson was just out there because he was really good at it. Because they were like, he gives us our best chance to win if he plays all these downs. Because he's a legit threat to do it. He wasn't a decoy running a swing route. He was like, half the time he was the guy they wanted to go to. Make something happen.
I don't know. I think Derrick Henry has an MVP under his belt if it was a different era. I firmly believe that. I firmly believe that. I mean, 2,000 yards nearly twice. Pick your season, 17 touchdowns. Like, back-to-back years. He was on pace for, like, in 2021, like, 445-ish carries, 440 carries before he got hurt. And that was the only year he got hurt outside of early in his career. Which is like, for a guy his size, I don't know, man. I don't know.
He was great. He's one of the best I've watched. He was my number 2 peak that I've watched. And probably a top 10 running back of all time. I just think Peterson's higher than that.
Yeah.
And at his peak, like, he was just unbelievable. Mandatory Peterson highlight watching.
I trust me, I have watched.
Mandatory.
I have watched, I promise. It's not that
so
I haven't.
Freaking athletic.
I've just continuously watched Derrick Henry, and I firmly still believe that this is the case.
And Peterson has the record for the most rushing yards in a game of all time. Not that year, I don't think. That was his rookie year he did that.
That's who should have broken that? Shouldn't someone have broken that and they took him out or something like that recently?
I think there was a receiver that almost did it.
Was that what that was?
Because the record holder is someone stupid. It's like it was an old Rams guy. Flipper Anderson is the all-time receiver in a game. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, this motherfucker ran for 296 rushing yards in a single season or a single game. It's insane. 296 is an unfathomable number. It's so absurd.
I do think eras for running backs matters a lot, though. I think that also.
I mean, they were 8 years apart, and they were like slightly different eras.
I think it was more than slightly. Like, Derrick Henry is rushing in an era that was very, very more so pass heavy and a lot more based around the quarterback doing the heavy lifting. Like a lot of guys early, maybe not so much 2012, but that was toward the tail end of running backs are important mindsets. Like we were kind of pulling away from that nearing 2012. And then after that, 3, 4, 5 years later, we had great running backs coming in and out, but they no longer were the engine of offenses like they were before. Where Henry is the last of that breed to some capacity. That's a pure runner, if you will. Like I guess the McCaffreys and the Bijans are doing it in different ways. But
yeah, they do.
I don't know.
That's why forever now, like rushing stats are going to be like, yeah, 1,400 yards, great year. But like looking back, that like 1,400 yard rusher, you were like the 6th best rusher that year. And that's more like early 2000s, like the Chiefs with like Priest Holmes and Sean Alexander. Like that was really the prime for that. Was early 2000s. But God, dude, like there were guys like Clinton Portis and Curtis Martin that people don't even talk about anymore. They would have been the rushing leader like almost every year of the last couple of years, which is nuts.
Well, my other running back, this is also difficult, but I'm going to give it to one of either 2018 Saquon or 2024 Saquon. This is definitely more of
it's hard not to give it to the 2,000 yard rusher.
It is.
Yeah.
I think maybe this is another case of 2025 being a little bit too close to mind, but just going back and watching rookie year Saquon is like mind-numbing how he's able to change direction. He's covered in Vaseline, the guy, when people are trying to tackle him. He is just so difficult to get your hands on. And then he's also extremely powerful. Like he's so strong at driving forward and pushing through tackles and to be as elusive and flexible as he is and as he was in 2024, like this guy was breaking off long runs left and right. And I think to some degree, being a rookie like he was that season and being that good kind of weighs heavily, whereas like in 2024, you're behind the Eagles' offensive line. They're one of the best teams in football. So maybe that partly plays into it, but that doesn't change like who he was as a runner either. So,
I mean, he dragged his team to the Super Bowl.
yeah, I mean, he did. Like, he beat the Rams single-handedly, or else they would have lost.
Every single time the Eagles went like 3-and-out multiple times in a row, here comes a Saquon 70-yard rushing. And it wasn't like he was just running through gaping holes. He was making like 2 people miss at least per run.
Yes.
Because this is the epitome of like video game character. Weighs 230 pounds, but is one of the most agile running backs that we've seen in a decade. Like, this is the closest thing to me we've seen since a Peterson, where it's like, yeah, the guy's 225, 230, but he's a terrifying athlete and is hurdling people backwards and running through them. Like, physically nothing he can't do. Like, and is a talented receiver. If they were just a better passing offense, I think we would have seen that more. And that's something we saw more in like the 2018 Saquon era, where he was Bijan before Bijan.
Mm-hmm.
He was that level of talent to me. And he was one of the better receiving running backs in the league. It's just Jalen Hurts doesn't throw the ball that much, so we didn't really get to see it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he is that level. And he was one of the 4 that I picked out. I wasn't sure which guy I was going to go with next, but definitely was a heavy consideration and probably my next favorite, because a 2,000-yard rusher in today's era doesn't really, like, it's way harder, especially it's like with how good people are at like stopping one specific player nowadays. Like, usually they can scheme you out of a game, but he's just so well-rounded.
Yes.
Well, my next one's gonna be a weird one, kind of. Like, I didn't expect to see him on here, but I'm gonna do it. I have 2019 Christian McCaffrey era.
Yeah.
The 1K, and he ran for 1,000 yards, and it was a receiver for 1,000 yards. Like, when you talk about all time, this is the greatest all-purpose season of all time. Where it's like, yeah, we've seen a lot of great rushers, and I was going through them. Shout out Le'Veon Bell, dude. He was a guy I really had a hard time taking off this list from a pure talent perspective. But Christian McCaffrey is the best receiving running back of all time. The guy had almost 2,400 scrimmage yards. He had 19 touchdowns. Literally could not stop him. Because if you clog the hole and stop the run game, like, good dude, here comes him frying you on a route. Like, it wasn't like he was like Austin Eckler catching a swing pass and falling forward for 6 yards. He was like frying you on a multi-step route. So shout out Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, I almost had him here. He was one of my top 4 as well. And this is a guy that I'm so glad ended up where he did in San Francisco, because I think we were able to take what he did in 2019 from a receiving perspective and from a production perspective and place it into an actual offense that was not just, throwing it to him because he was the best receiver, but they were utilizing him in a schematic fashion that was just flat out terrorizing defenses and second-level linebackers with Kyle Shanahan. Like, he is the key to Kyle Shanahan's offense, and he has been for a couple of years now. That's why they traded a handful of day 2 picks for him, which was considered a decent amount at the time, because at that point we were like, all right, he's kind of been in and out of the lineup. He's had a hard time staying healthy, and he still did. But without Christian McCaffrey, I think the success that Kyle Shanahan has had extended throughout the past few years is probably diminished with the quarterbacks he's had to play with. But without McCaffrey, I think, the Brock Purdy's and the Garoppolos of the world have been a little bit better off with a guy like him in the backfield.
100%.
So he's like the ultimate cheat code in such a unique fashion. And I do think uniqueness plays a part in how I approach this too. So that's why he did make it for me.
Yeah. To me, it wasn't even like uniqueness in like terms of how they're built or how they do it. Like, to me, it's just uniqueness in the fact that like no one's ever produced like this before. Yeah. So like I don't really care too much about like no one has ever like, been this strong, or no one's ever been this good of whatever, but it was just the fact that no one has ever touched production like that good in that way. And it wasn't just like the fact that he did it. It was the fact that he's been such a help to his team. He might be the most valuable running back, like to an offense that we've seen in such a long time because of how many ways he can be used. And not just that he can be used, it's how good he is at them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was close to making it for me. We'll go on to receivers, and I realized we didn't snake there, so you do get the first receiver pick.
Okay, that was one I didn't even care. Honestly, I have three studs. I'll take what I think in my memory is the best one. That's 2012 Calvin Johnson. One of the only players where he is more known for his nickname, Megatron. And like, it wasn't just a nickname because he liked Transformers. It was because this guy played like a freaking Transformer and was built like one. I mean, 1,964 yards. At that time was an average of 122 yards per game. And the funny photos of him being double teamed, like literally double teamed by two guys pressing him on the goal line, those aren't fake. And it wasn't just a one-time thing. Like, people literally were double teaming him, not bracketing him, they were literally putting two corners on him and pressing him with two people to try and win. And it still didn't work. He broke the record. So, best season of all time to me, pretty comfortably.
Yeah, it's hard not to put him around here. He's one of those guys where it's like, yeah, I might not be able to sit here and say I remember seeing those moments where there's two guys, lining up across from him 5 yards out, but you just know it happened. You watch them happen. I went back and watched it as many times as everyone does if you're a football fan. Like, Calvin Johnson's highlight tape is one of the most fascinating pieces of cinema ever. Like, why is this guy doing this? How is this guy doing this? And
it's everything that DK Metcalf should have been. It's like DK Metcalf, but you put his sliders to 100 on everything.
Like, the reach that guy has with his arms, like his wingspan to me always just was so unbelievable. Like, obviously he could jump super high. Obviously he's extremely tall, but seeing those arms reach as much as they can go, it just is so insane to me how a human can have that sort of reach. And it's why he made legit adult professional athletes look like children. And there's only a handful of receivers that you could say did that, but he did.
He was 6'5", 240 pounds, with about 33.5-inch arms. Like, I just described a pretty ideal edge rusher just now. Like, looking at his mock draftable profile, it's a website that like shows you like their entire like combine measurements and stuff. This is a guy that is literally built to be an edge rusher, except that he ran a 4.35 40-yard dash and had a 42.5-inch vertical. So this is like the Madden build for a receiver.
Yes.
And he broke the record. So it wasn't just like we're like glazing like Bo Jackson, where it's like, yeah, this guy was a freak. No, this guy did it and looked the part.
Yes, most definitely. I feel like it would do very poorly for us if we didn't mention him in a conversation like this.
I would not allow that.
No. Well, and I feel the same way about my first receiver pick, and it's going to be Antonio Brown. I think Antonio Brown is a guy that might lose points in a debate like this because guys like Julio Jones, for example, who he was pitted against and still is pitted against, just for the sheer fact that he's just not the athlete that Julio was, which I am all for being pro athlete in a argument like this, but Antonio Brown moved in such he was like Michael Jackson, like with the way his feet could move and the way he was dancing on the sideline, and there was no one more unguardable on a back shoulder fade than Antonio Brown at that time. Like in 2015, him and Julio Jones, I was going back and looking, like those two guys just traded blows week after week. Antonio Brown finished with 190 targets. Julio finished with 193. Julio had 193 catches. Antonio Brown had 136. I'm sorry. Receptions, Julio Jones had 136. Antonio Brown had 136. Julio Jones finished with 1,871 yards. Antonio Brown finished with 1,834 yards. So it's like these guys had as identical of stats as you could possibly have. It just felt like to me, Antonio Brown also had, 3 other seasons where he led the league in receiving yards. And you can even argue, I think this is his best season, 2015, but you could
100
argue,
by far, yeah. I think
you could argue that there are other versions of him that are definitely fitting of being one of the best receivers of all time in their own right. So I think that was enough to push him over Julio for me. And like I said, maybe he's not, mossing Luke Kuechly 60 yards down the field, but he was turning defensive backs around in their blind spot and manipulating angles and leverage. Like he had feel figured out in a way that was almost otherworldly, like very insane how he just worked around DB's hips.
Yeah, he was definitely on my top 3 list, and it was so weird comparing him to Julio because it's a conversation talked about still and all the time, and rightfully so. I mean, they have almost identical stats in every single category. Like, not one of the guys really has an edge on the other one in stats. And it wasn't even just that year, and it's also really weird that it also happened in the exact same year in 2015. But their stats before and after that look very similar. Like, each of their next best season is about 1,600 yards, and each of their next best season after that's about 1,500 yards. And almost all at the exact same time, with relatively similar, like, quarterback play. Like, everything about them was the same, except that they couldn't have played any differently. Which is why it's so weird. Because Antonio Brown is probably the best route runner I've ever watched in terms of like actually like getting open and separating consistently. And he had some of the best feel for the position of all time. And Julio is probably, outside of Megatron, probably the craziest physical specimen we have seen at the position of all time. So it's like, which way do you go?
Yeah.
For me personally, I do still prefer Julio. I don't think you're crazy if you prefer one or the other, because literally we're looking at the exact same thing here. And like the only reason I even give Julio that jump up is I value the ability to just destroy a defense in one play, whereas Antonio Brown, it kind of felt like it was more like death by like 1,000 blows, because he was just so good at getting open, but Julio was just taking the top off. And that's kind of more my style of receivers. Just someone that can like threaten to destroy your defense in one single play. And he did it all the time. I mean, he did it to over 1,870 yards.
Yeah.
So it's up to you really, like which style you like more, separator or deep ball monster. It's literally just pick one. It's the same exact receiver. But man, AB was special too. It's also hard to pick him because he's such a dick. And Julio is like off the grid wherever. Like, I don't know what he's doing these days, but I bet I couldn't find him. And AB is gonna like somehow be more known for his Twitter career than his football career in like a decade.
I think the thing that also pushes Julio over Antonio over Julio for me is Julio just had a hard time getting in the end zone. There's no denying that his end zone numbers just weren't as good as you would expect for such a physical being. Like, he only had one season over double-digit touchdowns, only one season with 9+ touchdowns, and that was 2012 with 10. Antonio Brown was such a threat near the goal line, was such a threat in the end zone. Like, being able to make turns and make DBs go the wrong way in such a tight area is what I think is the most difficult part of being a receiver, is when you're confined in the red area in a tight space and you're still able to get even just enough separation. It might not be much, but just a few inches is all it takes in that area of the field. And Antonio Brown was so good at creating a lot of space even when it got tight. And I think I valued that just a little bit more than maybe taking the top off. But even, it just is so weird how Julio's whole career, he just never had a season where he like, oh man, he had 14, 15, 16 touchdowns. How did he only get in 10 times at most? That is so crazy to me.
It was weird. I mean, even in Calvin Johnson's best year, he only had 5.
Really?
Like, in the 1,900 yards season, he had 5 touchdowns.
Wow, I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
And he had a couple seasons where he had like 12 or more.
Okay.
Because he was also like that crazy of a physical specimen, but like sometimes, I don't know, it might just be like the actual physical attention that they give to you. And whereas someone like Pittsburgh, they had a lot more other options to go to with like Le'Veon Bell, Martavis Bryant, Emmanuel Sanders, Heath Miller. Like, they had they had some dudes over there.
Yeah.
I don't remember who the Falcons receiver 2 was in that era. It was before Russell Gage. Who was this?
Depended on what time we're talking.
Yeah, like 2015 Falcons. It was probably. I mean, they had Roddy White, like the ghost of Roddy White, around this time. Jacob Tammy, and then like Justin Hardy. Like it was a bunch of like guys that like you just really are not scared of.
Yeah.
So I think that did play part of it. It's like they actually could double team him, and Antonio Brown couldn't be double teamed because their team was too good.
Right. Well, I think you get the next receiver pick too. Yes.
I just picked two. I'm taking Julio Jones.
Taking Julio?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got Megatron and Julio. You got AB and your next guy.
I'm having a really hard time here. I'm gonna give my honorable mention first. My honorable mention is OBJ. I think peak Odell is in that Antonio Brown and Julio Jones conversation. Like, I don't think he was as good of a separator as Antonio Brown was. I don't think he obviously was as physical as Julio was, but he was so good after the catch, and at the catch point itself, like he knew how to make the space he needed at the last second. And there was a catch that I saw earlier watching his highlights. I think it was against Atlanta or something, where he's getting pressed to fuck off the line of scrimmage. like 95% of the route, he's getting pressed. But then at the last second, I'm not going to say he committed a penalty or anything, but he's just somehow able to outmuscle the DB, go up and high point the ball, and he hits the hardest whip and nay I've ever. Like, it was so obnoxious. It's like one of the biggest highlights he has. And it's just so funny the arrogance he played with when it came to going and getting the football. And at the sheer foundational level, when it comes to being one of the best players, it is being able to catch the ball and being able to do something with it in your hands. And when you are so good at those two things alone, like even if you don't get open all the time, if you're still able to catch it at the rate he did, if you're able to create as well as he did after the catch, like any slant he was taking to the house, he was. Any ball that was in the whole shot of cover two, if that safety was a second late, he's snagging it and he's spinning around the safety, or he's somehow getting the angle around the safety. It's like if you gave him a glimpse of daylight, he was able to manipulate himself and stay on his feet and get down the field and pull away. So he's my honorable mention. But similar to my love for Derrick Henry, I feel like Tyreek Hill is like one of a kind, and there's never going to be a player like Tyreek Hill in NFL history again. So I have to put him on here. No one will break the game like Tyreek Hill has ever again. I firmly believe that.
Yeah, I think it's just the way that he's fast is really his thing. Where it's like, yeah, like we might even see players faster. It's just like the acceleration and the short area quickness on top of the speed. Like that might never happen ever again. Because like it's such a weird way that he moves. It's just so unpredictable on top of being just so freaky fast that if he was like a more talented receiver from like a hands perspective, and like maybe if he was taller or something, like this could have been the best receiver of all time. If he would just wasn't cursed with being like 5'3" or whatever he is, like there could have been a chance this was the best receiver ever, because he moves probably like he's probably the hardest to guard from like a running standpoint ever.
I think if you lined up every receiver in history one-on-one with a defensive back, I think Tyreek, maybe over the course of, let's say, 100 reps, wins the most reps of any receiver in a one-on-one situation. What do you do?
It depends who my corner is, but for sure.
I don't who though? Like, what do you do? Just try to get your hands on him. But the only chance you have is trying to jam him. That's it. If you miss at the line of scrimmage, you lost. There's no catching Tyreek Hill. So that's kind of what I've always had in the back of my mind.
I'll ask Chido Awuzie how he did it all the time.
No, bro, I'm sorry. Like that, I think back to that Buccaneers game where he had like 200 yards in the first quarter. Like, yeah, like who's doing that? Like he changed the way coverages were pre-snap. Like the whole Mel Kiper banned too high shells or whatever his rant was. That started because of Tyreek. He was so broken that defenses had to start playing this sort of coverage to prevent these sort of big plays, and it all started with the way Tyreek was tormenting defenses in the secondary because of the way he was able to pull, every single player's attention deep, and If you left him alone, he was gonna get the ball. He was gonna beat the one defender. He was gonna score. He started all of that, and I think the Chiefs. I'm not gonna say a miracle the Chiefs still were able to win, but that just speaks to how good the Chiefs are. Which, going back to the Mahomes thing, is kind of why I'm like not docking him, but the Chiefs are a certain oiled machine that we're able to adapt from that play, having that sort of player to not having anything really close. Like, damn. But Tyreek he's got to be on here if I got to stay consistent.
It's almost so weird how he was like significantly better production wise in Miami.
Right. It's like he did.
Like if you look back, like he put up Anquan Bolden stats in Kansas City. Like his best year was 1,400 yards, and his next best was like a couple 1,200 and 1,100 yards, which is good. But like, he was putting up Brandon Marshall's like stat lines, and then he goes to Miami. In his first 2 years, he puts up 1,700 yards, and then just had the deepest fall off of all time, down to like less than 1K, and now he's a free agent because he's not even like. It's so freaking the weirdest career ever. This guy.
I think he would have hit 2,000. I think he dealt with an ankle injury at the end of the first go around, or maybe the second. But
first time he played all 17. Next time he played 16, and he had 1799. So he was almost 1,800.
Yeah, I remember like some ankle thing kind of slowing him down at the end of one of those seasons, but like he just was unguardable with one of the biggest laughing stocks at the quarterback position that is in the league right now. So.
Tua was decent for a minute, though. I'll always have his back. He was all right until it was cold weather time.
He was, but I think Tyreek
and it was the worst.
I think Tyreek was why, to be honest.
Yeah, Tyreek and Waddle together was such a beautiful sight. I'm gonna miss that for as long as I live. And Achane, oh my god, they suck.
Yeah,
God.
I know, man.
They only have the running back left. That's terrible.
What's that? Tight ends now?
Tight ends.
All right, I think I get this one. And even though this might not be my all-time answer, controversial or not, my peak answer is going to be Rob Gronkowski.
Yeah, the GOAT.
Yeah, I don't think this requires much explanation. This is the craziest physical specimen, again, that we've seen ever play this position, and he's just unbelievable. Do I have to explain my Rob Gronkowski selection? I don't think I do.
Not even a little bit. No, not even a little bit, actually, because this is the best tight end to ever play football. And it was so good that he had such a small career, and people are like, "Yeah, don't care." That's the GOAT, man.
Yeah,
that's the GOAT. For my next pick, I got two, old school and new school, but I think I'm gonna take 2022 Travis Kelce as my pick because I also took into account how unbelievable this guy was in the playoffs. Like, Kelce is the all-time playoff receiving leader, not just for tight ends, but like in general, because he is the greatest playoff receiver of all time. He is he's probably the greatest tight end route runner of all time, the smartest tight end of all time. He didn't have like the physical dominance to like fully dunk on people and like put people onto like highlight reels. In fact, his highlight reel is probably the worst of any of like the top 10 tight ends of all time. But it's probably way longer because he was just so good at the little things that it didn't really quite matter.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the AB and Julio conversation, just wrapped a little bit differently. We're looking at a guy that was maybe not as flashy, but he knew how to get open. He knew how to feel his defenders out. He knew how to find space, whereas like Gronk/Julio, just it didn't matter who was around them. It didn't matter what it took to get the football. They were going to reach, extend, and bully and come down with it. So it kind of is the same thing. But I do think all time, because of the length of Kelce's career and the playoff statistics, which is such an underappreciated part of his career, I feel like whenever talking about the whole Kelce and Gronk conversation, I don't think people truly encapsulate how much Kelce has done in the postseason in a conversation against a guy who has played just as much postseason football. It's like, not that Gronk didn't get the opportunity to play under the bright lights as much as Kelce did. No, that's not the case at all. Like, when it mattered most, Kelce was always the most productive player on Kansas City in those biggest moments. And I feel like that does matter a lot in that conversation. And just seeing him still play at a relatively high level at this age, I think that matters for an all-time debate. But that's
if you argue all time, like I don't have a huge issue if your all time argument is about like how much they accomplished. That's cool if you want to take Kelsey for that. My all time is like it literally if I'm redrafting like
Yeah.
this, like who like I talk about ability
Yeah.
and like dominance and skill. And not to say Kelsey is like super far off of that. I think he's probably my number 2 or 3 all time. He's unbelievable all time. I just got Gronk's ability just a little bit higher. He would have been my number 1 overall pick if you didn't take him.
Yeah, I think in a debate like this, Gronk is the sole 101.
Yeah, I mean Gronk in oh my I forgot about. Do you remember Gronk in the Denver game in 2011 in his peak?
Kind
What
of.
he did in that game?
I remember so much. I remember Gronk moments of just manhandling people.
The Colts play.
Yes, I remember the Colts play. The Broncos game
But
not
yeah,
so much. The Colts game I do.
the Broncos game in the divisional round. He had 10 catches for 145 yards and 3 touchdowns.
What the fuck?
And basically won the game by himself.
That is
Like, it was so nasty. I remember that. Like, yeah. Oh yeah. Now, oh my God. Yeah. I forgot he got an ankle sprain in the AFC Championship that year. That was sad. And then he only had like 20 yards in the Super Bowl because of it. But God, he was such a monster.
Well,
Who's your 3?
my next tight end. This is tough because I thought of the other guy first, but then I thought, okay, how is he not on here? It's George Kittle.
I was about to write it down if you didn't say it. I knew you were going Kittle.
How
He
is
was up
Kittle?
there.
How is he not? I think he could be quickly forgotten in a debate like this, but I think when it's all said and done, while Kelsey and Gronk will be the 2 guys at the top of this conversation, Kittle is like third, and I feel like it's kind of comfortable. And this is another one of those tight ends that was not just unbelievable as a receiver, but he is one of those engines to his offense that makes it go on the ground and in the trenches. Like he is as physical and as nasty as he needs to be successful for a rushing attack. And then you just look at the yards after catch ability. He can high point a football. He's had games with 2-3 touchdowns. He had 1,300 yards in 2018, which for a tight end, that is a kind of a blocking archetype, rather ridiculous. Like this is kind of what Gronk was doing to some capacity in a different light. And 2019, he had like 4 seasons of 1,000 yards. We're talking about here 11 touchdowns in 2022. Like across the board, it's hard to pick out one season outside of maybe the 1,300-yard one where you're like, yeah, that was the best. But he has just been such an important factor to one of the most well-oiled machines in the last 25 years that it's like, without Kittle, similar to without McCaffrey, what does it look like? And you know that while they play on the same team, you take one of those pieces away, and I think it's a completely different. It could be a completely different story.
I would agree with that. I mean, he was on my 4. It wasn't quite my 3, but God, like the mixture of receiving and blocking was pretty special. And yeah, to him, like that, I think a lot of his issue that keeps him from being like in that conversation has been like the red zone dominance. Because even like when he gets open, it's more like broken play than it is like, let me moss this guy real quick. And he can do it. He's not like a useless jump ball guy at all. He can 100%. He's done it plenty of times. But it looks a lot more ordinary than if you're watching like one of these physical specimen just take the ball off your forehead then spit on you afterwards. Like it's way different to me. But yeah, God, Kittle was and is, I mean, still an unbelievable talent. I think 2018 is definitely the year I go back to where he had 1,377 yards and was considered like the best run blocking tight end in the league outside of those like 280-pound blocking only guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I mean, like I think that when it's all said and done, this guy, I mean, he could definitely be in top 5 tight end of all time. And like he should be over the Wittens and everyone else that we're talking about. And he's so much better than them.
Oh, absolutely. I think he's one of those guys that fits the description of like, yeah, it's a different era. We have to respect the old guys, but then again, it's like, I don't care, man. He's just a flat out better football player. I don't care what that player looked like 45 years ago, what his numbers were. I can guarantee you he wasn't moving like George Kittle.
No.
And
yeah.
I think his yards after catch ability too is just so it's so special for a guy that is his size, that is of his archetype or supposed to be set archetype. Like Kelsey, he had juice. He's good after the catch, but he was always more of that receiving sort of nimble slot-ish type of receiver, whereas like Kittle, he's always in line, yet he's still extremely difficult to tackle, extremely difficult to catch. Like he was putting up yards per route run numbers that are, similar to a lot of pretty solid receivers. So for a blocking tight end, I think he deserves as much consideration as the top two guys.
100%. And another thought, like I feel like people are taking Trey McBride for granted. Yeah. Looking at this guy's freaking production of the last 2 years, and no one cares. Literally no one cares. No one will acknowledge this guy's like the best tight end in the NFL. Like no one will do anything. They're just like, yeah, but he gets the ball thrown to him a lot. Right. Yeah, I wonder why. Maybe because he's like the best corner route runner in the NFL. Like don't even care about position, says Gruden. But yeah, my pick is going to be peak Jimmy Graham.
That was my other pick.
God damn, dude. This was one where like you had to be there. You really had to be there because his prime was shorter, and it's very consistent with a lot of the guys that were just physically dominant. Like your body can only take so much, and that can be an argument for like all time stuff. We're talking peaks right now. In Jimmy Graham's peak, I almost took it over Kelsey. Like genuinely, this was. I mean, his peak was 1,200 yards and 16 touchdowns. We're talking about like physical dominance. Like if I'm picking one tight end in history to throw a jump ball to, it's him. Yeah. Comfortably. But he wasn't like some like big oaf that just had to sit in the end zone only. Like he was probably the best at like seam balls of any tight end we've talked about so far too. Like send this guy deep 1-on-1 or even 1-on-2 and he's destroying everyone. Jimmy Graham sadly did not have the full career that everyone kind of hoped due to injuries and his body just wearing down because he was so big, but this guy was like if Darnell Washington was just really, like, was possessed by Randy Moss. Yeah. It was the coolest freaking thing ever. And it only lasted for like 3 years, but God, it was so cool.
It was. And it was so cool to see him come out of retirement. He, like, retired for that year in 2022. Then he came back in 2023. Yeah. He didn't play much. But do you remember I think it was his last play. Didn't he catch a walk-off touchdown or a last-second touchdown? He just walked off. I think he caught
a couple of them. Yeah.
He just, like, walked off the field, and that was like, all right.
And then he got like arrested for like walking in the street or something. Like it was like there's something really wrong with this guy right now, and like it was more sad than funny. Yeah. But it was like, oh man, like what a weird way to go out. But like we'll never forget.
No.
Like one day my kids will like have football cards and be like, "Who was Jimmy Graham?" And I will like my tone will drop.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Listen, let me tell you a story of the greatest tight end I ever watched for like 45 minutes, and then he just fell off the face of the earth in Seattle.
Yep. That was my other selection, and I actually had him written as 3 until I came across Kittle again, and I'm like, oh yeah, because I was working from my earliest year up to the latest, and I'm like, oh yeah, Kittle exists, but Graham was comfortably in there the second I remembered.
Yeah, I think for our next positions, we can probably just do one of each.
Okay.
Because my God, it was so hard to pick between all these fantasy relevant ones, but for the other ones, it was like there was 1 or 2 guys, and then it was like, oh wow, we're scraping here.
Mm-hmm. Well, whose pick is it? I don't remember.
I think you took Gronk.
Yes, I did.
So I will be picking the best lineman I have watched personally, and I think this is gonna have to be like early 2020s Trent Williams.
Fuck.
It's probably. It was close. There was like 3 though. I have some honorable mentions. I won't even talk about them, but like I'll let you get yours. But yeah, Trent Williams was probably the best blend of size, athleticism, power, and technique I have like ever seen in a lineman. Like forever when scouting, I am going to be chasing Trent Williams, and I'll never find it because this is the best lineman possibly like peak of all time.
Yep. But like,
man, I'm gonna miss this.
2021 Trent Williams was an absolute freak, and I was going back and reading some articles about that came out around that time, and people interviewing him, and he was just saying things along the lines of, I think he was early 30s around that time, 32 maybe, and he's just saying like, I feel so strong, I feel so fast, but he's never been so smart, and you can just see it in his game. Like he is just reaching levels that a guy his age, a guy his size shouldn't be reaching at speeds he shouldn't be hitting, and he's just wasting no movement in the process. And just talk about another 49er player that it's like without him, you pull just him out of the equation, you don't know what the course of history looks like. And it would be probably worse. I think comfortably would be worse without a Trent Williams that has been the anchor to this organization for so long now. And even in Washington, I mean, he got traded for what was not really worth the player he was, but he was having seasons back then too that were remarkable on top of it. So it's like, yeah, Trent Williams is he's one of those unique guys that I would tag in that way of like, I don't know if we'll ever see a player of his size and IQ and speed, like unbelievable player. That's tough because that was my 101, and then the rest is just kind of.
There were some dudes.
It's tough. I think. I feel like it would be disingenuous not to mention Joe Thomas. I will mention Joe Thomas because throughout the course of the 2010s, he was not only one of the best, if not the best offensive lineman, he was also the most consistent in terms of playing time. Like, you cannot take away the Iron Man streak. Like, that is so important for a lot of guys that I looked at in a conversation like this across all positions, like George Kittle, like Tyron Smith, who I wrote down. It's like, you know, as things kind of got toward the end, and even in the middle of it, I mean, Tyron Smith had a hard time staying on the field a lot. And
every year.
But if I needed a bodyguard going out to party for a night in a dangerous area, Tyron Smith is probably the first guy I'm calling next to Trent Williams. So I have to mention both of those guys, but I think peak-wise, 2017, Jason Kelce was like moving and touching everybody, like literally touching everybody. Like the mobility that player had was so special. Again with him, I was going back and looking at the context of that season. And in 2016, he was kind of getting pushed out the door. Like, no one really thought he was capable because he was so small. He was getting pushed around, and he was talking about how the next year he kind of shore up his technique with Stoutland, and he became such a refined and smart player again. And the two things with my top two guys here is just how smart they were in both Trent Williams and Jason Kelce. And there's nobody that they can't run with, that they can't reach. And both of these guys are engines, whereas like Joe Thomas, I feel like definitely was, but he played with a lot of other great offensive linemen. Jason Kelce played with a lot of great offensive linemen too, but he was in the middle of it. He was basically the second quarterback, and we see what has happened to that team on the inside, especially since he's been gone. So I feel like Jason Kelce, especially in 2017, given the year they won the Super Bowl on top of it, with the backup quarterback, has quite the prowess to me.
Yeah, Joe Thomas is a top 5 offensive lineman of all time. But sadly, no one gives a shit because, like, I don't even want him to protect those quarterbacks. He did too much. What are you protecting Kevin Hogan for?
Yeah.
For absolutely no reason do you need to be doing all that. But, like, with Jason Kelce, like, he had some stakes to his game. And if Joe Thomas played for any successful franchise, I think that people would talk about him even more.
Yeah.
Like, he gets, like, a Larry Fitzgerald thing.
Yes.
It's, like, unbelievable respect, but like, your team sucked, dude. At least Larry had like a couple of good teams. Joe Thomas he didn't stay around for one, which is so sad. But yeah, Kelce had some stakes. I mean, he's been in multiple Super Bowl. Like, I mean, actually only the one, probably, right? I don't think he was in the second one. Was that Cam Jurgens?
Yeah, because I think right.
I think it might have been Cam Jurgens in their win over the Chiefs.
I don't know.
Oh, but he played in 2 because
he
definitely
lost. Played in 2 because they lost.
He played in that one. He lost that one.
Yes.
I forgot they even played in that one. Yeah. So he's played in 2 Super Bowls, won one of them, played great in both. He has been the centerpiece of multiple really good rushing attacks and one of the best pass protectors at the position ever too. Yeah. But the run blocking is really where he makes his money, because like you said, like it wasn't like he was like picking people up off their feet and throwing them. He wasn't nearly the strongest, but he was like one of the most nimble that could just get his hands on a couple people per run and just get in the way enough to like spring some big runs, which is honestly more important than just pancaking one guy and falling on your face. So that's why every single time I watch the Dolphin center, Aaron Brewer, I'm like, oh, I see him in there. I see a little Kelsey in that game, and I like it. Like I don't need my center to be giant and burly. As long as you have a little bit of an anchor and you don't give a bunch of ground and pass pro, you just go be like a little jitterbug and run around and you just touch people in the run game, and that's cool.
Right.
That's great.
Like the whole wasted movement concept is like you said, you don't need to kill somebody to be effective. To be able to just get in someone's way long enough to keep that hole open for that split second that's necessary. That's all it's required. And Kelsey was just doing that every single play, especially that season. And he was getting out there on screen passes and he was paving ways that way. Like there was just nothing that Jason Kelsey couldn't do. And if I had to choose an interior guy, I would go Kelsey. And I think my mind immediately went to tackles for this, which I think most people's minds would.
More, yeah.
So I was like, I definitely want to get somebody that, at least in my mind, is worthy of mention. And, just going back at some of Kelsey's seasons were worthy.
Yeah. Unbelievable. He was probably my two, but God, Zach Martin in his peak also might be the greatest guard of all time, to be so honest. People don't care as much because he didn't have Emmitt Smith rushing for like 1 billion yards per year, but dude, Zach Martin in his peak was the best, probably the second best lineman I ever watched.
Yeah, he deserves.
He's just too quiet. No one cared.
Yeah, right.
Like with Jason Kelsey, he was like one of like the loudest, like funniest dudes, great leader, like. So people love him, but no one cares about Zach Martin. But they should. He was that level of player.
Well, people also think – I think people think of Tyron Smith a lot just because he was like the transformer. He walk on the field, you immediately notice him. He's wearing all the equipment on his arms and his legs. It's like the guy looks like a literal robot out there.
I mean, that guy had a six-pack.
Yeah, that guy.
At like 320 pounds.
That guy was a freak.
And Zach Martin looked like he was from the Midwest. Like, I don't even know if he was, but I'm pretty sure he looks like he was.
Oh, boy.
It sounds like you got the first D tackle off the board. We'll just do one each for all defenders as well.
I have to go with Aaron Donald, right?
Yeah. And, like, I think there's, like, 4 different Aaron Donalds you're probably taking before you take the next player.
Yeah, probably, right? Like some of these guys, honestly, I feel like you don't even have to point out a year because they just were that good for so long at different moments of his career.
Donald probably has a year, though.
What year was it again?
I had 2018 written down when he had 20 and a half sacks for the that was so.
I didn't even look at his numbers. I just
fucking
wrote down
freak.
Donald.
God,
I know that he would
bring him. God, he's such a freak.
Fuck me, man. Like 10 Pro Bowls, 8 All Pros, Super Bowl champ, defensive rookie of the year. Fucking
8 All Pros for someone that retired early is insane.
AP1, 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 AP1. Oh, they were consecutive also.
Yeah, no, he was never an AP. Like there's no way he could ever be an AP2 in his prime.
No.
Ever.
His whole career was his prime.
It was undoubtedly that he was the best defensive tackle since like his second year in the league.
Yeah.
And then just from there, like he was the best and then he retired and he could come back and probably is one of the best immediately.
The only year he didn't make an All-Pro team was 2022 when he played 11 games. Well, I guess in 2014, but he was Defensive Rookie of the Year, so I guess that also kind of counts in some capacity.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, like I think people take for granted defensive tackle sacks because of him. Mm. Like for a defensive tackle to get like 9+ sacks in a year is really impressive. Like looking back in history and seeing how many people actually did it. But he had 20 and a half and just completely broke the bar. Like, I remember way back when, like, Ndamukong Suh and Geno Atkins were each getting, like, 11 sacks, 12 sacks. And people were like, wow, this is, like, the best in the league. Mm. And then here comes freaking Aaron Donald with 20 and a half, dominating defensive player of the year conversations. Like, and he had good comp. It wasn't like he was playing against scrubs. Like, he had, like, Myles Garrett and TJ Watt all doing their thing in this era, too. And he's whooping their ass.
Yeah, easy. That might have been the easiest pick of the episode.
Probably so far, yeah. I would say so. I'll say maybe Adrian Peterson. That's a walk.
Oh, my God.
No. Donald is the greatest defensive player possibly of all time.
Yes.
Peak for peak. This is what this is about. Yeah. But an underrated peak to me, honestly, is peak Chris Jones.
I wrote him down. I did
God,
write down
dude, he
Chris
was
Jones.
fucking. He to me is like when you talk about like a big one and then a gap. I think he's two and then like a just as big of a gap, maybe even bigger for the next person. Because we're not talking about Chris Jones as like just the next best option. This guy had 15 and a half sacks in his prime. Like, we're not talking about a guy where you have to like really. Like, we're not settling for Chris Jones here. He was a monster. And he was the backbone to a very underrated part of the Chiefs dynasty, which is just the defense in general. Like, everybody goes to like, oh, you know, Hall of Fame head coach, Hall of Fame quarterback, Hall of Fame receiver, Hall of Fame tight end. But Chris Jones is like the fifth name people get to down the line, and he was arguably like the second most impactful of all of them. Because he would anchor down, he could play nose, he would rush off the edge, like he could do everything. And was the best defensive tackle after Donald.
Yes, I agree. I wrote him down too, and I think a lot of it is just thinking about how Spagnuolo was finding success in big moments, and so much of it leaned on how Chris Jones was being utilized and pressure packages and how they were moving the pocket. Like, it all started with Chris Jones and the attention Chris Jones brought to a defensive line. Like, without Chris Jones, I think you could go as far as to say that there are no Super Bowl appearances maybe at all for Kansas City. Like, outside of Chris Jones, what defensive star power are we talking about outside of the couple of years of Trent McDuffie that they got? Like, we're not talking, and L'Jarius Sneed maybe for those 2 years.
For a year.
Like,
yeah.
Outside of Chris Jones, there's not been much, and every single player I feel like we've talked about to some degree has had a 1B next to them, or they've had someone that they were alongside that was doing a lot of heavy lifting themselves, whereas Chris Jones, from the second he got to Kansas City up until even now, is the one doing all of the heavy lifting, and he might not put up the numbers that people want him to put up, but when you are bearing that much responsibility for one of the best franchises in history at this point, you deserve your flowers. So without Chris Jones, there might be no Chiefs dynasty. There might not be a Spagnuolo as we know him. Like, that is how impactful he's been to the history of Kansas City. So,
yeah, I mean, the guy's had 15 and a half sacks multiple times, actually. I didn't even realize that. He did it in 2018. I had no idea. And then ever since then, he's almost a guarantee to get like 7 to 9 sacks. And every once in a while, he'll just throw some double digits out there. Like, this guy is still a productive guy despite being like triple teamed constantly.
Yeah, I like that shout a lot, because I think a guy like him is easily forgotten in these conversations.
He's a Hall of Famer. He should not be.
Yeah.
Like, he is a Hall of Famer to me, like first ballot. This guy was top 2 at his position for like a decade now.
Yes, agreed.
But we move on to the edge rusher.
Mm-hmm.
There's some awesome ones, dude. But God, 2014 J.J. Watt is like, he was the face of the league.
He was
an edge
catching
rusher.
touchdowns.
He had 5. He had 5 touchdowns that year. He was in MVP voting because listen to the stat line of a defensive end that weighed like 285 pounds. He had 20 and a half sacks, 29 tackles for loss, 4 forced fumbles, 5 touchdowns, and a defensive player of the year. Multiple of his touchdowns were offensive, and he also had multiple defensive. He had pick sixes, he had fumble recoveries. He was also called JJ SWAT because of how good he was at knocking the ball down. Like, even when he was double teamed and boxed, he would just knock the ball down. This is, I think when we're talking peaks, I hesitate to put Donald so high because I'm like, JJ Watt in his peak was that good. He was Donald good for like a year.
Mm-hmm. I mean, people say that was better than anything Donald had.
I actually won't argue it.
I don't think that's too crazy to say because of how good that one individual season was. It just is like, wow, another player that simply was a one-man wrecking crew in every single sense of the defensive line. Like, you were moving him all over the place. He can rush off the edge. He was coming from the interior. And he just was so athletic. Like, I think Aaron Donald was very athletic, but I think J.J. Watt was moving in a way that you were able to throw him out there on offense and to run a fade route. Like Aaron Donald just didn't have that. What I don't want to say nimbleness per se, but maybe
I mean, he's a rock.
Right, he's a rock. Like
stubby.
the coordination, maybe whatever the word is that you're looking for. But like JJ Watt's athleticism allowed him to maximize on his strength and his quickness that made that season just such a pinnacle of what his career was. And it just sucks that that was like not it, but
it wasn't, because he had another 20.5 sack season too.
Maybe that season was just so good. It's like
it was just that it was that good. I mean, he's a 3-time defensive player of the year. Like we're not talking. And he's a multiple time sack leader. So it's not like he was like a 1-year wonder and then like missed a bunch of, like, he's a 3-time defensive player of the year. One of the only people to ever do that in history. But it was just the fact that 2014 was like MVP level, because not only because he almost broke the sack record, but it was also that he was like getting more touchdowns than some people's running back was, and like he had almost 30 tackles for loss, in like the most disruptive football season of all time, bar none.
Oh, that makes my decision kind of difficult. I'm between Von Miller and Myles Garrett, and
that was my next two.
Yeah, I think I think you have to go. I think I have to go Myles Garrett just because of that whole concept of what else was Myles Garrett getting from the rest of his teammates. Like, not much. Von Miller played with some very historic defenses with some very, very good players, and he was able to just kind of tee off and, you know, be a one man band against a lot of tackles on islands, where it's like Myles Garrett is and was catching and fetching double teams at a ridiculous rate, and he still was winning, and he still was getting to the quarterback in speeds that were just unheard of. Like his quick pressures were through the roof despite having the most attention on him every single down. It's like, I don't know if there is really many players in history that you can say were unguardable to an extent. Like you can't scheme Myles Garrett out of a game. And I think next to Aaron Donald, this is like second in terms of that level of, okay, he's defensive player of the year every year. He is just that good.
This is LeBron.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I even say he's LeBron because I've heard so much discourse about him where they're like, oh my God, they lost the trade. He's 30 years old. What's he going to do? 30 years? Like, he's almost done. No fucking chance, dude. I remember like all like those like Max Kellermans of the world being like, oh my God, LeBron turned 30. Thank God, he's almost done. Garrett's just getting started, dude. That was the second best I've ever seen an edge rusher look. Like, full respect Von Miller. Hall of Famer, one of the best to ever do it. And I think a lot of his love also comes from being a Super Bowl MVP, which is ridiculous to do. And he was so dominant there. But I've never seen someone win so fast as Myles Garrett, despite being 270 pounds. Because it wasn't just the fact that he broke the record. Like, that's a crazy feat in itself. But it was the fact, like, he wasn't just getting, like, hustle, like, coverage cleanup sacks. He was getting them fast. Mm-hmm. And it's also not like people are passing on the Browns all that much. People are usually beating them handily by, like, the third quarter, and they're running the ball a lot. So he's having to, like, really, really get his sacks early in that game. Like, when they're playing the Patriots, they keep it close. He gets fucking 5 on Drake May. Like, when he gets a subpar tackle, like Will Campbell, it's not competitive. He had 5 sacks because the guy physically couldn't handle it. Like, it was just, we haven't seen any athlete like this at the edge rusher position since, like, a Julius Peppers. But even then, he wasn't moving like this.
No.
This is an alien, and he's 30, and he's not slowing down.
He's coming off the best season of his career. I'm confused as to where this, like, he's going to slow down because of how old he is concept. Like, sure, maybe he won't have 25 sacks, but when you plug him into a Los Angeles defensive front, the impact can only go up. Like how do you go from being in Cleveland where you were alone wrecking as much havoc as he was to a defensive front where there is so much other firepower to expecting some sort of fall off? Like where does that compute?
Yeah.
It doesn't in my head at all.
Let me ask you, what team did Reggie White play for?
After the trade,
Just what team do you think of him as?
Green Bay after 30 years old.
He was 31
Yes, after 30
when he was traded to the Packers. We're talking about an all-time great who we think of as a Packer.
Yep.
He played for the Eagles till he was 31 years old, but we're like, yeah, this guy was a monster. Because when you're a physical specimen, you can play for a freaking long time. When you are as strong, even when Myles Garrett loses a step, even when he's not the most explosive edge in the league, he's still like one of the strongest. And his technique is so flawless. Like, this is going to be a really good player for a long time. I think we might have seen the best. I mean, breaking the sack record is probably the best he'll have, but he's probably going to still be right here for a while.
Yeah. I don't know. People are actually debating whether or not the Rams not lost the trade necessarily, but I don't know. I just don't see how people think this player is suddenly going somewhere in the next couple of years, I guess is where I'm at with it, because he very clearly is showing he's only gotten better as he's gotten older. So
yeah, like Jared Verse could be as good as you want him to be. Jared Verse, respectfully, is not even like he's not even a fraction of Myles Garrett. And you can see that in the production. He's not even getting a literal fraction of the production. So, shout out, unfortunately.
Linebackers now?
Yeah, off ball. I was thinking only off ball, right?
Yes.
Like guys that were like middle linebackers or OLBs that like dropped in coverage.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And that's got to be Luke Kuechly. If I
no other way around it.
The first pick, another easy selection here is Luke Kuechly, right? I mean, this guy was one of the smartest football players that we've ever seen step on the field, and his impact to a Carolina team that was, struggling for most of his tenure when he was there, but another guy that just was always one step ahead of everybody, and he had the athleticism to execute, and he had the speed and the range to get downfield, but he also had the physicality and the strength to get active at the line of scrimmage. It's just there wasn't a single task that Luke Kuechly couldn't tackle, and a Hall of Famer in every sense of the word. I think there's another guy here that you could definitely put at the top of the list, but I'm not sure it's much of a debate in my mind at all.
I had two guys because they're so different that it's like I'm thinking right now which one I would prefer to do. Damn, I don't know, but Luke Kuechly, like him not being a first ballot Hall of Famer, like made me want to throw up. When we're talking about a Hall of Famer, it's like who was the best at their position for like a stretch of years. It wasn't like he played 3 years and then gave up. Like this was a guy that played for he played for a little while. And was, since he was 22 years old, was the best at his position, inarguably. Defensive Player of the Year at 22 years old. Stupid, dude. Off-ball linebacker getting Defensive Player of the Year nonetheless is crazy. Let alone being like a baby.
I know.
Stupid. I still can't decide. I'm very much between two people. And I think if we're going for peak, I'm going to take Fred Warner.
Yeah.
Honorable mention. Shout out Bobby Wagner, though, because his career has been better than Fred Warner's. We're talking about accolades and what he's done and longevity. And also shout out Patrick Willis, but I think his best stuff was before 2010. So it's a little bit before what I can remember. But also shout out him. But yeah, dude, Fred Warner is the best coverage linebacker since Kuechly. And like, we're not talking about like a stumpy run defender. We're talking about a heat-seeking missile that is elite in coverage, basically looks like a safety. You can't cross the field on him. He'll smother your tight end, but he's also a missile of a run defender. So Fred Warner is to me, an underappreciated player in today's game. Today we're just like, yeah, he's the best linebacker today. But like I feel like he's treated like he's a step below like the Bobby Wagners and the Levante Davids all time. But he's not even a little bit.
No, not at all. I think you're right in the sense that he's just he's one of those guys that I feel like falls in the bucket of we don't think of him that way because he's still playing. But once it's all said and done, it's like, yeah, man, Fred Warner was that good. He is that athletic, that explosive, like another guy that there isn't a single thing you can't ask him to do. I think Bobby Wagner historically he's always been a well-rounded linebacker, and maybe the latter half of his career made me think a little bit differently, but he never was playing as good of coverage as guys like Fred Warner and Luke Kuechly were. He was more of a line of scrimmage presence, which is good. It's cool, but I think when talking about off-ball linebackers and seeing their athleticism flourish when they're guarding guys that they shouldn't be running with, that to me is a tall tale sign of who I would rather have in a conversation like this. Like, just seeing some of the plays and coverage that Fred has made, that Luke has made, it just Bobby just couldn't do that. I feel like even at his peak.
And at his peak, I think he was still a good coverage linebacker for being built like a fullback.
Right.
But it was just like he's good for who he is. It wasn't like he was completely shutting down the field like a Warner or a Kuechly. Better run defender than Warner, though, in my opinion. But like the gap between run defender for his direction versus the gap between like Fred Warner taking coverage linebacker is like pretty vast.
I had DeMario Davis on my list too. I think in 2018 maybe there was a year at the latter of
freaking last year
and last year.
Crazy. Yeah,
but
at like 37 years old.
Yeah. Well, let's
Shout out to Mario Davis.
Let's go to. What do you want to do? Safeties or corners last? You have the first pick of the next position, so you can choose.
I'm not overly emotional about either of these, really. In fact, my favorites played for the same team. I'm gonna take corner, and I'm not gonna do Revis Island because God, I know how good it was. I've seen like the graphic, all right, where it's like, yeah, look at all these elite receivers he held to under 20 yards. I just didn't watch it personally. Like I watched like the NFL.com's playback, but like I have not really watched those games live. To me, Richard Sherman is the best corner I watched personally, because like I know the argument of like he's not following receivers around and pressing them, but he completely shut down a side of the field, and he was getting ball production. Like in his peak, he had 8 interceptions, was dominant in the playoffs. And just he didn't get beat by anybody. So Richard Sherman in his peak to me is who I'm gonna pick.
Yeah, that would have been that. I don't know who I would have went with first. It would have been tough, but he's one of my two, and he's just one of those guys that's built to maximize what you can get at a cornerback position. Like you're just not finding guys that are so lengthy like he is, so smart like he is, that can just take away so many passing lanes. In a way that like a tall linebacker can, a tall corner can take away areas of the field that might be open against a certain coverage when a corner just isn't as tall or doesn't have the wingspan. But Sherman was just so good at like you said, shutting down a side of the field because you couldn't hit maybe some of the regular holes you could with his size. But from like an ethical standpoint of playing corner, I think my pick, even if Sherman was here, would be Stephon Gilmore in 2018. You're winning Defensive Player of the Year. I think he had 6 interceptions that season. This is a guy that was sheerly shutting receivers down constantly, and he's not like Hugh. He wasn't Richard Sherman size, obviously, but he just played such a soothing way of playing this position. Like he's just mirroring guys, he's staying in their hip pocket, he's deflecting passes when they come in at the right time. Like it's so ethical, it's so clean, and there's just such like a calming sense to it almost. I don't know how to explain how I feel about it.
Is he Kawhi Leonard?
Is he Kawhi Leonard?
He might be Kawhi Leonard just
in like a career
in
sense?
the NFL. No, I mean just like where he's super quiet. You've probably you haven't heard him speak that much, but just he just came in, did his business, was the best at it, and then left.
Yeah. I mean, I think in that way he went, like Kawhi went and won with the Raptors, and then just kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
That was kind of
He's
it.
still great. Kawhi's still awesome. Gilmore, it was like he was defensive player of the year, and then like he's just been so quiet. Even when he was playing like a couple years ago, he was really good. Even like kind of towards a little bit of the end of it, and he just disappears slowly into the night. There was no like dramatic, oh my God, Gilmore is retiring. He just went away slowly, and like he was always good, but he was one of the ones where it took a couple years. Like he had a whole career in Buffalo, didn't he?
Yep.
Yeah, and then
5 years.
he was good. Yeah, but then he comes to New England, like on a second contract, and it's like, holy shit, this is the best corner in football.
Yeah.
Which is nuts.
It was 2018 2018 he was a first team All Pro, and then 2019 was when he won Defensive Player of the Year, and it had 6 interceptions. So he had those 2 years back to back where he was just shutting down
Correct.
everybody around him, and obviously an integral part of what was kind of a successful time in New England's football history, right? They went in 20 because they lost to Foles in 17, right?
Yep.
And then 18 was I can't.
Is that when they beat the Rams in that
the
stupid Super Bowl?
13-3 or whatever? I think, right? That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
It
the
might be
worst
that year.
ever. Yeah, I think it was one of those like end of 2010s years. Like I'm awful with years. Don't ever ask me numbers. I'll never remember your birthday. Like I can't do anything with dates.
I find it crazy that in 2018, at least as far as what PFF says, he only gave up 94 yards after the catch on nearly 1,200 total snaps.
He was there, dude.
150
He was
coverage
just
snaps. Like
even if you beat him, he
even
was
when
on you.
the ball was getting caught. Yeah, I mean, you weren't getting very far. Like 94
No.
yards on over 800 coverage snaps. That is pretty fucking nuts.
A peak to shout out though, Pat Pete. Shout out Pat Pete in his prime, dude. No one cared because Arizona playing for Arizona, you get taxed because no one cares. But like, shout out Pat Pete because not even just the corner, but God, that return specialist of Pat Pete was so filthy. Definitely would have been probably my second pick.
Yeah, Pat
did
Pete
one.
is a guy that I don't remember too much of, maybe because he was a Cardinal. But he was one of those guys that you're playing Madden, he always had a good card. And it's like a lot of people knew of Pat Pete because he always was one of the best like ethical corners to be at the position. But I feel like I don't remember
he was 6'1", over 200 pounds, but like the best athlete at the position at the time. So it was like everything that we love about Derek Stingley, but he was buff and way better and more athletic.
I can't remember because I didn't look at Pat Pete's numbers, so I can't remember if he was
had
one of
some
those guys that was more of a. Was it like a longevity thing, or was he a peak? Was he a guy with a peak?
Peak.
Peak. Okay.
I think he had some ball production too. I want to say he had some ball production for sure.
Yeah.
I can't quote it.
Crossed my mind for some reason.
Yeah, I mean his second year in the league he had 7 interceptions, but he was just a dog all the time. But we can move on to safeties. And safeties suck because, in my opinion, the 2 best safeties of all time, their peaks were just before I was watching. In Ed Reed and Palomalu. Which really sucks because I think Ed Reed's like one of the greatest players to ever step foot on a football field. So to not have them on my list stinks.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
And
that made it tough because I feel like after that, it's tough because I feel like after those 2 guys, there's not like a definitive best safety of this last 14 years or so. If anything, I think seeing these new age safeties and the impact they have on the game, like in the Derwin Jameses and Kyle Hamiltons, I think those guys could very easily be in a conversation like this because they're just impacting football and becoming defensive chess pieces to a degree that we haven't really seen from a lot of safeties, historically speaking. But I think from again, like the ethical coverage standpoint, I think I'm going to go with Earl Thomas, a part of a very legendary secondary. He kept everything kind of together back there. He allowed guys like Cam Chancellor to be such a free roamer and to do really whatever he wanted to with his athleticism. Like, I think he and Richard Sherman were so important to a lot. Like, I think Cam Chancellor gets a lot of love for the right reasons, but that's just one of those players that if he's not in that scheme, if he's not surrounded by the guys he was with, then Cam Chancellor's who knows what Cam Chancellor is, right? You're not probably
Cam
getting
Chancellor,
the same version.
Chancellor's awesome, dude. But like Earl Thomas to me was like a tier or two better. As much as I love Chancellor, like highlight tape was better than Earl's, but dude, Earl was a baller. He was such a more well-rounded, more important player. Like to me, it was Earl and Richard, and then Cam and Bobby were like in the second tier of that.
Yes.
Bobby was better after the Legion of Boom. But yeah, like God, Earl Thomas is to me he's the gold standard I look for when I'm scouting a safety prospect. I'm like I am trying to recreate Earl Thomas. Because trying to recreate like a Derwin, like any of them, like they're physical specimens. Like they have to be built a certain way. But Earl Thomas was like 5'10". He just happened to be really freaking talented and hyper intelligent. Like he's one of those guys where I'm pretty sure his RAS score was like in the mud. Like I don't think that he was an overly impressive like physical presence whatsoever. Yeah, he had a 507 RAS, which would like not fly for a lot of people. Pretty average 40-yard dash score. His jumping numbers were just awful. He's 5'10". Nothing about this physical profile screams like, you know, the best safety in this era, but he was. He would have been my number one overall pick. But my number two...
I think like I said, I think his importance is just surrounded based on like just hearing the guys of Seattle's defense, like who was most important. You take away Earl Thomas, I think you're probably left with a lot of blemishes in terms of coverage busts and what you can do with certain players. Like he was a glue. He was a glue guy, but also talented.
His is just it's so annoying that like he made that unit so great, but the fact that he played in that unit takes away from his greatness.
Right.
Because people are like, yeah, he was a part of the Legion of Boom. No, he was the Legion of Boom. Mm-hmm. He is why it was so great. But people are like, just associate him with the unit, not the individual that made it so great, which stinks. Mm-hmm. But I won't forget. I won't forget him flipping off. Was he flipping off Pete Carroll?
I think Pete Carroll and the organization just as a whole, because the whole contract dispute, and he ended up getting hurt, and it's like he's kind of like the example of why players fight so hard for every cent they can make, because at any moment your career could end with an injury and you won't get a dime, or at least the money that you thought you could have gotten pre-injury. Like things just change so fast. So that is a very important moment in history for people that are like, these guys are so greedy. They have so much money. Why do they got a whole? Why like? Just look at Earl Thomas, man. Earl Thomas is a perfect example of what happens when, fine, I'll do what's best for the team, and then that's it. Leg broken.
Yeah. Poor guy. If I were to pick one, I think I have to go Derwin James.
Yeah.
I think. Derwin James early to like 2020s, maybe late 2010s, Derwin James. I think people associate him of like the Derwin James of now because he's been battling a lot of injuries since then, but like I think of the Derwin James that like picked up Travis Kelce and threw him on his head. Like this was it's hard to even call him a safety. He's just a defensive player. And like when I was talking about safeties with people the other day, I think that he in his prime was like, I would comfortably take him over Kyle Hamilton of today. And I love Kyle Hamilton. But what Derwin James was doing was this, except he was such a better athlete. And he was a legitimate pass rusher. He was the best run defender and tackler at the position at the time. And he could cover all positions. He would cover your slot. He could play perimeter corner. He was playing over-the-top safety. This is the most complete safety I've ever watched, who unfortunately has dealt with some injuries, and he's not quite the same level, but he's still top 10, maybe even top 5, and at the time was the best safety in the league for a little while.
Yeah, he was absolutely in consideration. It's like him and Kyle Hamilton have different impacts in the sense of like Derwin, you're asking to do a lot more like flying around all areas of the field. Like if you're sending him around the line of scrimmage, you're probably sending him after the quarterback on a blitz or to get extra pressure. With Kyle Hamilton, it's like you might be doing that, but he's more so he's using his length to close off rushing lanes, and he's getting in the way for tackles for loss in that sense. But then you're probably a bit limited in terms of what you're going to get out of him in coverage. There are some, he'll be able to get your bigger tight ends, but you're not going to be able to throw him against a lot of these quicker, faster, even smaller corners that maybe Derwin could keep up with a lot better. So it's like they have different impacts. They're both chess pieces, but like you said, early Derwin James, it sucks because he was so good, but I feel like we are getting to a time now where coordinators have figured out how to really use this type of player a lot better in recent years. And it's like if we would have gotten early Derwin James now, I mean, who knows what we can be getting from Derwin. Like if Jesse Minter had his hands on him when he was early in his career, like I feel like that could have been an all-time player. And it still kind of is, but
yes, I mean,
it's like he was just
he's still an all-time great to me, yeah, but he was just like, for a safety, if you're not getting like crazy ball production, people generally like aren't crazy about you. So I think he went under the rug a lot because he would finish years with like 3 interceptions, like 120 tackles, and like that was it. But like, it was great. It was great stuff.
Yeah, no one was really used to safeties being what he is at that time yet. Like Jamal Adams 2018, 2019 was probably the most recent example of it, and I still don't even think that was the same.
Not quite. He was a guy that came into my head. But like they even called him Blitz Boy, like derogatory. Yeah. But nowadays if Nicky Menwari comes in on a blitz, they're like, "Oh my god, he's so good." But Jamal Adams was doing it, and they're like, "Get this fucking bum off. He can't even catch."
Yes, I think it was like a stigma with the position. It's like if you weren't like a blanket coverage safety, then you weren't a safety. But now it's just such a different era of the position.
Yeah, nowadays like they can just be a linebacker, and like that's totally cool because it is. Like just fucking be good at something, and like you'll find a spot on my football team. And God, he was freaking good at it for a minute.
I thought about him. I'm like, wow, remember Jamal Adams? What did he fetch in that trade? Was that 2 first-round picks?
It was something like that. I think he came up when I was thinking about like the Sauce and the Micah. Like we're talking about like defensive player trades, and I think his name came up a couple times in the recent trades, and it was definitely like the worst one of all of them, of just like how unimpactful he was in Seattle compared to how good he was in New York. Yeah, what did he go for again?
The Jets received a 2021 and 2022 first-round pick, a 2021 third-round pick, and safety Bradley McDougall. It's kind of like
who would? I mean, and to think about who they drafted and who they got in 2021 was either Sauce Gardner or Garrett Wilson.
That was 2022. Garrett Wilson was 2022.
Oh, yeah. Yes, who was 2021?
I figure no one too good because the site doesn't list it.
No.
Let's see. Who was it?
Who did the Jets get?
How bad could they have been? I know. Like
it wasn't the Zach. It was Elijah Vera Tucker. That's boring. Because I was like, yeah, there's no way it was Zach Wilson second overall. Yeah, Elijah Vera Tucker. But he's talented, just hasn't found the field yet because he's always hurt. But still, like, yeah, like one of the Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner players, and then a guard for what ended up being Seattle Jamal Adams. Yeah, you take that.
And a third, and a day 2,
and
also
McDougall, who never did anything after that, but for sure.
Well, that will do it for our all-time prime peak teams. This was fun to do. I want to I don't remember every pick I made off the top of my head, but I want to after the fact put them all together on a graphic and see what they look like, because I think we might get screamed at for a couple, maybe.
I know all mine, but yeah, I mean, I don't think so. I think they'll just be like, why wasn't Revis on there? That's why I'm only hesitant to put a graphic out, because Revis was the one guy where I didn't feel in good faith that I would be able to put him on my list because I didn't really watch it from that era. And they'll be like, "Where's Revis? Richard Sherman wasn't better than Revis." I'm like, "Yeah, I know, but I can't explain that
Right.
all that on a graphic. I can't have like the fine print."
You can have like pre 20, not pre, post 2012 ish kind of.
But wasn't he in
So I don't
that?
think you had anybody. He was what?
Like,
More. I
what
think that was a
year?
tail
What
end.
year was? What year was that graphic from? Where he
That was like
shut down the
2010
league.
or so. Like,
If that's the
'cause that
case,
was
I feel
like-
better about it.
Wasn't like To on that graphic, and
For sure, he
who
was.
else was on that graphic?
T.O. was like a. I'm pretty sure he was like a Bengal in that time. T.O. was a Bengal for like a year, and no one knows about it. It's so weird.
Yeah, he was his Revis's stretch came in 2009 to 2011. He was an All-Pro in 2014 as well, but then that was with New
That
England.
was like a-
but it's still
I was
not.
about to
his
say that was a
prime.
different team. He was cold then. God, I forgot about that. He was good. He wasn't Sherman good in 2014 though, but
Right, like I'm not gonna. I set like I said, I set my line at like 2014 pretty hard. So it's like anything before that, I felt like I was reaching. So,
yeah.
but yeah, obviously Revis would be on here, guys. We're not idiots. We're just being honest.
A madman. Yeah, we might be. We could be, but good
Well,
list.
if you
I like our list.
Well, if you guys enjoyed, well, actually, let's run through it. Do you have everybody you picked?
Yeah.
Okay, run through it.
My quarterbacks were peak Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. My running backs were Adrian Peterson and Christian McCaffrey. My wide receivers were Megatron and Julio Jones. My tight ends were Travis Kelce and Jimmy Graham. My lineman was Trent Williams. To make up my defense, I had Chris Jones, J.J. Watt, Fred Warner, Richard Sherman, and Derwin James.
Okay, so my quarterbacks are gonna get me slaughtered. I already know that's where it's all gonna go down. I had Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. I had Derrick Henry and Saquon. Tyreek Hill and Antonio Brown at receiver. At tight end, I had Gronk and George Kittle. On offensive line, I had Jason Kelsey. And then on the defensive tackle, I went with Aaron Donald. Edge rusher, I had Myles Garrett. Linebacker, I had Kuechly. Safety, I had Earl Thomas. And corner, I had Stephon Gilmore. So it might be worth on a graphic to throw our honorable mentions just so we have a little bit more range and like coverage of our own asses. So there's a mention of more players that people like. But this was fun. If you guys enjoyed, definitely let us know what you agree and disagree with down in the comment section below. And we're gonna have more fun episodes like this throughout the course of the off season. So this is the fun part. This is the fun time of year where we can really kind of just spread our wings. So if you enjoyed, definitely subscribe. The Discord is down in the description below, and we'll see you in whatever episode 117.
Who cares?
Who fucking cares? The number doesn't matter anymore. Peace.